Alright, good evening folks, and welcome back to Wilderness Wargaming. So, for many years, the Space Marine Army had a character called the Smash Captain, which was what happened when you gave a captain a Thunderhammer, or maybe a Power Fist, and a jump pack, and allowed him to jump into combat and attack the biggest enemy target and try to wipe it out in a single round of combat with devastating melee power. These days, that character is kind of out of fashion, although once in a while you do see a Slash Captain that uses a sword and makes a somewhat different approach. But it turns out that the sororitas have their own version called the SLASH CANONESS, and today we're going to see how to build one that has a very unique capability and talent. So the Canoness comes in quite a variety of configurations. You can have the chainsword configurations with either the null rod or that chalice thing that nobody ever takes, with plasma pistol, inferno pistol, possibly a bolt pistol. And they can have a relic chainsword, either from the generalist or the Bloody Rose, because of course it's Bloody Rose. You can have the power sword and null rod variety, which is generally an inexpensive way to make a canoness, but still can do this technique, albeit at slightly reduced effectiveness. Or you can have the Mighty Blessed Blade, which is the canoness's most powerful generic melee weapon, without using a relic to improve it. And we see those in many varieties. Here's two of the ones that I have, one with a bolt pistol and one with an inferno pistol. And we are going to take a look at the inferno pistol variant today and see how to make this SLASH Canoness very, very effective and a big surprise for your opponent. Now, what's her secret? Well, the Canoness has a stat line that's pretty good for a sister, although not as good as a Space Marine. 6 movement, 2 up weapon skill, ballistic skill, 3 in strength and toughness, 5 wounds, attacks 4, leadership 9, 3 up save. And she also has a 4 up invuln, and she bestows reroll 1s to hit on her nearby allies. But because every army has access to Blessings of the Faithful for Canoness and Palatines, we can improve her melee capability quite a bit. And what we can do here is give her Rapturous Blows. Now this is going to add strength and 1 damage characters to all of her melee weapons except for relics. And this is key to making this work. Second, you have the Miraculous ability, and this means that once per game, when she makes her attacks on an unmodified wound roll of 6, that attack inflicts a mortal wound as well, in addition to the normal damage. To that, we can add the Blessed Blade. Now, the Blessed Blade is quite handy because it boosts her strength to 5. It's an armor penetration -3, and it does damage 2. When combined with the Rapturous Blows, that will become strength 3, armor penetration -3, and damage 3, which is pretty good since she'll be hitting now at strength 6. Now, there is, of course, a relic option for this, the Blade of St. Eleanor, but this is not a great choice because the only thing this does is boost the damage by 1. It doesn't add any special capabilities to the sword, and it doesn't boost any of its other stats, so it's, in my view, not worth it. And she also has access to a very, very special relic called the Mantle of Ophelia. And this is a relic that is limited only to the Canoness. You can't give it to any other type of character. And what it does is it changes damage from any attack she takes to 1. So, if she takes a hit from a Plasma Cannon, 1 damage. Las Cannon, 1 damage. Dark Lance, 1 damage. Volcano Cannon, it's going to be 1 damage. The only other source of this that I'm aware of is the Tannenhauser Bones relic that the Black Templar Space Marines have access to. This is a very, very special capability, and keeps your delicate Canoness alive for significantly longer than her 4 up invuln and 3 toughness would. Now, before we go on, there is one thing we have to address. The Warlord isn't just her weapon and her special ability, it's also her Warlord trait. And there is a little bit of a problem, and that's Morvenn Vahl, who is the commander of all the Adeptus Sororitas. Now, Morvenn Vahl is required to be your Warlord if she's on the field, so you have to take her Warlord trait, and that Warlord trait is Righteous Rage, which is the best Warlord trait that any of the Sororitas have access to, because it allows the Warlord to reroll all hits and wounds. Now, it is not bad that this is on Morvenn Vahl, because She is absolutely brutal in melee herself, so it's not a waste to have it on her. But it makes it a little bit tricky to configure your Canoness if she's there, and if you're playing competitively, she's almost certainly there because she is in every competitive Sisters list I've ever seen. In casual games or narrative games, she might not be, but there's a good chance you're bringing her even there because she is just wonderful. But what to do for our Canoness? We have some options. Well, first of all, we almost certainly want to select the Passion as our one sacred right. What this does is it gives the Canoness exploding sixes on hits. Now, this is pretty great even in normal battle rounds, but on her one time that she goes to get her mortal wounds off of wounds of 6, this means she's going to get more options to wound and deliver more mortal wounds. So this can cause an even bigger spike in damage. So that's something to start with. But there's still the remaining question of the Warlord trait. What should we do? Well, we can always solve this pretty easily by just playing Bloody Rose, because they get access to another great melee Warlord trait, which really isn't even too bad as an option just to begin with, because this gives her an extra attack. And this is on top of the extra attack and armor penetration that Bloody Rose gets for charging. Also, this trait allows her to advance and charge, and since the Canoness does not have access to a jump pack like a Space Marine Captain would, this is pretty great because it can get her a lot closer in for a more reliable charge. Now, we could also take the Argent Shroud. The Argent Shroud can advance and shoot, so that does kind of help her use her shooting option, which is pretty nice with the Inferno pistol, assuming you don't suffer the Melta Curse of always rolling a 1 to hit. Or if you happen to have taken the Condemner Bolt Gun and you're looking to do some Psyker sniping with it, that could be an opportunity to do that. But her main jam is melee, and you can reroll 1 hit or 1 wound roll when resolving her attacks. Now, since she hits on a 2 to begin with, unless you're playing some army or fighting some target where you can't reroll wounds, like Votan, and then you're going to use it on the hit roll, this is going to allow you to overcome some fairly difficult toughness challenges for the Canoness, because it is still difficult to wound really high toughness targets. You can only really get her strength up to about 6 on the attack. And they also have a Warlord trait that is not entirely bad. It doesn't make her hit any harder, but it does allow her to fight first, because the other part of this is it allows her to heroically intervene. So she will get to fight first when she heroically intervenes on the opponent's turn, and then we'll get to fight first again on our own turn if there are still targets within range. In addition, the longer heroic intervention means she can be a surprise threat from an opponent who forgot about what the Ardent Shroud Warlord trait does. Now, if you take the Ebon Chalice, their Warlord trait it's a very good trait in and of itself, but it is not good specifically for this purpose, so it's better put on another character. But what we can do is select Hand of the Emperor, because now on Ebon Chalice we can select 2 sacred rights instead of having to roll randomly to get 2. And that gives us +1 to advance and charge. And +1 to advance isn't particularly helpful, but +1 to charge is pretty helpful. That can really increase the reliability of your charges, especially if you use a reroll or if you have a miracle die available. You can get fairly long charges fairly reliably with this plus your miracle dice. And if you go custom, you can kind of mix and match these. So if we take the Silver Chalice in their custom configuration, I would take Guided by the Emperor's Will, giving me the same rerolls as the Argent Shroud had, but then also taking Holy Wrath, which gives us +1 armor penetration. And that gives us part of what the Bloody Rose has. And that's a pretty good combination. Now, what, though, if we don't have access to either the Bloody Rose or the Silver Chalice's order-specific Warlord traits? Well, we have Beacon of Faith. Now, in 8th edition, this was considered a very, very useful Warlord trait, a very good general purpose one. And this edition it's considered far less so, because it only gives a miracle dice that the canoness can use. It has to be used before your next command phase, or it gets replaced. Now, why this is pretty great is because your canoness hits on a 2 or better. You're 5 times out of 6 going to get an auto hit die from this. So if you combine that with the fact that you can have a reroll, say from 2 of these, you can pretty much guarantee that you're going to get through the hit gate with almost no misses, and go ahead and roll your wounds. Now, you can also save your miracle dice and use them in the wound phase if you want to do that. But this gives you a way to circumvent the lack of the rerolls from the Righteous Rage Warlord trait. And since you are hitting on 2s normally anyhow, that part, the rerolls aren't as important. It's really more important with the wounds. Now, some other things that help us get around this. Okay, first of all, if you luck out and your Beacon of Faith gives you a 6, you can use this to trigger the Passion to get 1 additional hit automatically. Or if you already have a 6 somewhere else, you can just not use it and trigger your exploding 6s this way. This is especially great on whichever battle round you choose to use her miraculous ability on to get her mortal wound damage boost. So if you're able to trigger it on that round, this is potentially a devastating strike even against a very tough enemy target. Now, if you can't use that miracle die for some reason, if it's not useful, you can, which is mainly because you got a 1 on it. You can still use that miracle die to score victory points if you took the secondary objective that allows sisters to discard miracle dice in order to get victory points. Now, throwing away a 1 doesn't score you, well, it only scores you 1 victory point, but it's a use of it if you don't have anything else to do. Another thing you can do, if you have a 6 either from this die or from one of your general pool, you can trigger Faith and Fury, which allows you to use the same miracle die for a hit and for a wound. So it can trigger your exploding 6 and then make one of those wound rolls an automatic 6 as well. It can't be both of them. You can't use the miracle die to be 2 wound rolls of 6, even though they came from the same original attack, but you can do it with one of them. And if you combine that with the once per game mortal wounds, that means you've basically got one attack that goes through hit and wound automatically and generates a mortal wound, and there's pretty much nothing your opponent can do to stop it. You can still save against the hit itself, but you've guaranteed at least one of them is going to do a mortal wound. And very few opponents will only take that single mortal. The other thing you can do is you can discard other miracle dice for 1 CP to boost one up to a 6. Now, I don't know that you can use the Beacon of Faith die to boost another one, but if your Beacon of Faith die is a 4 or 5 and you don't have any 6s, you only have, say, low ones, you can boost that one by discarding ones from your general pool for sure. So you can get a 4 or 5 turned into a 6, and then you could, if you had another command point, still use Faith and Fury. This is quite a combo if you use it at the right moment with that exploding damage pool. To sum this up, what we want to do with the Canoness is get her the Rapturous Blows blessing, buy her the Blessed Blade, your choice of ranged weapon, and then give her Ophelia's Mantle. Now you have a character that is Strength 6, AP -3, Damage 3, and has a 4-up invuln, 3-up save, who is only Toughness 3, but can only take 1 wound per attack. After that, if it is available, you can give her the Righteous Rage Warlord trait, or you have one of several options to give her a different Warlord trait, and several options for different Order convictions that can boost her melee up as alternate options to just the Bloody Rose, which is probably what you'll be using if you're in competitive play, but if you're in casual play and want to play something else, there's still some options here to make a pretty mighty melee character out of her. And maybe a little surprise for that guy at the game store who just always seems to have a solution to everything you do. Good luck in your gaming, and please remember to like, subscribe, comment down below, and ring the notifications bell. And we hope to see you back here at Wilderness Wargaming for more content very soon.